in today's video I was thinking about introspection and being an introverted thinking type, or being an observant type of person. It's mostly in regards to something that Werner Herzog said in an interview, where he says that psychology is one of the major catastrophes of the 20th century, which makes the 20th century seem like a mistake, and that introspection and over-analysis of the human psyche or soul is destructive. It's like illuminating every corner of a room and like taking everything out. Over-analysis, that kind of reflection is dangerous to being a person, to progress, to living and to experiencing life. And I think about that, and that does hurt me because Herzog is somebody that I really admire, and in many ways I would like to be like him. And I think I also, I say I admire him, but then some of the things that he says in interviews seem like an over-gloss or an over-performance of, not that he is performing as a certain type of person, but that I feel it doesn't really get to the depth of things, or it's not to be taken at face value. Like, there is a depth which cannot possibly be conveyed through the format in which a stranger like Herzog is coming to me. And obviously he must be introspective in some ways. He is an introvert, or at least he seems like an introvert. I would say he seems like an INTP, and I remember this December the Spectator had an interview with him, and my INTJ friend messaged me instantly and said, "Have you seen the interview with Herzog in the Spectator? Because he sounds exactly like you. He was travelling through Europe and knocking on strangers' doors and staying with them and talking about the innate human quality of hospitality, and how people seemed, they see a stranger in need, a traveller, and almost as if the boundary doesn't exist, and they invite them in, and just naturally wants to be good to each other, or naturally accommodating. Like an extreme situation that forces people into this kind of relationship, and you don't ordinarily get to observe it in such a raw way. He was saying, doesn't Herzog seem really INTP? And then he would see Herzog in interviews, and I think about it when people say that psychology, over-analysis, introspection is a danger, and I agree with that. I think over-analysis, or not over-analysis, psychoanalysis. Is psychoanalysis an impediment? Well, I don't know, because it seems equally a response to modern life and to the pathologizing of the human condition. Psychotherapy seems a way of bringing it back to its spirituality in a way, right? It's God, it's Christianity without Christianity. It's human relationships and wholeness outside of the mental health paradigm. So I think that's initially why it interested me. It's a way of understanding people through their experiences and through their interrelatedness, not saying that inherently somebody is a depressive, or inherently somebody is schizophrenic, or inherently, this great catastrophe just happened to them. It can be useful, and I did refer in a previous video. I did have psychotherapy, but I don't know if it helped, because I am introspective, and I think actually just doing something and getting out of my head would have been a lot better. I don't know what cognitive behavioural therapy is like. I should probably look into that. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not really talking about therapy, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like, yeah, sometimes I do feel bad for being an introverted person, or a daydreamer, or somebody who is more in their head than they are in the world, or somebody who is observant and analytical. And I was thinking a lot about, there's a book called Bring the Jubilee by Ward Moore, which I came across by accident, because in London you have what is called the Little Free Library, or the Little Lending Library, or maybe just the Little Library, and they're like bookshelves that you see outside certain blocks of flats, or outside certain buildings, or just on the roadside on some streets. people will give books to these libraries, and then you can just take or drop off any kind of book that you see. And so I picked up just randomly, or I say just randomly, I'm always picking up books from the street corners, but I picked up Bring the Jubilee by Watermore, and I found it really interesting. I really liked it. It's very depressing. It's essentially how an INTP undoes his life, and through living in his head and not living in the moment. And it's an alternative history about the American Civil War. A character named Hodge who lives in 20th century New York, and the Confederate South won the Civil War, and North America is divided, and it's just very, I don't know, it's kind of like a backwards history. It's a lot of fun, actually. But I was really interested in how it makes fun of Jungian archetypes. Let's just read through this. There's the formative type, Hodgins, and the spectator type. One acts and the other is acted upon. One changes events, the other observes them. Of course, he went on hastily, I'm not talking metaphysical rubbish. When I say the formative type changes events, I merely mean he reacts to a given stimulus in a positive way, while the spectator reacts to the same circumstances negatively, both reactions being inevitable and inescapable. Naturally, events are never changed. Why can't one be one type sometimes and the other at other times? I've certainly heard of men of action who have sat down to write their memoirs. You are confusing the after effect of action with non-action, the dying ripples on a pond into which a stone has been tossed with the still surface of one which has never been disturbed. No, Hodgins. The two types are completely distinct and unchangeable. The Swiss police chief, that's funny, Carl Jung, has refined and improved the classifications of Lombroso, showing how the formative type can always be detected. I felt he was talking pure nonsense, even though I had never read Lombroso or heard of Chief Jung. To the formative type, the spectator seems useless. To the spectator, the man of action is faintly absurd. A born observer would find the earnest efforts of the Grand Army, the formation of skeleton companies, the appointment of officers, the secret drills, the serious attempt to become a real army, lacking in humour and repellent. You think I'm the spectator type, Mr. Tiss? No doubt about it, Hodgins. Certain features might be deceptive at first sight. The wide-spaced eyes, the restricted fleshiness of the mouth, the elevation of the nostril, but they subordinate to more subtle indicators. No question but that Chief Jung would put you down as an observer. Spectator? Why not? Spectators had no difficult decisions to make. Spectator types and participating, active people, and feeling sometimes, the over-analysis of being an introvert, it does undo us. And are we set in these ways? Do we have to be like this? Do I have to be an analytical person? Do I have to be a psychologist? I think also of what Jung says and what people who practice Jungian psychotherapy say, and what is also in Christianity, is the fact that you sacrifice your strength for your weaker aspect, and then that weaker aspect turns you into a stronger, more whole person. So in the case of being an intellectual observant type, sacrifice it for being an emotive active person, and then you become more whole and integrated with yourself. And this is true. I've noticed this happen because I have recently tried to live more in my emotions and relatedness with others than I have in my own head and my intellectual aspects, and I have become a lot more free and easy in my life. But I think, as recommended as a Christian as well, give up that which you pride so much, and live with everything, give it up to God. But then I think in Jung as well, in Myers-Briggs psychotherapy, which I do not practice, what I've known of people who do practice it is that they encourage you to come out of your own personality type and to align with other cognitive functions, to develop the capacities of all types, or to develop the capacities of your shadow, to develop the capacities of what you could be rather than just where you are. And Jung in Psychological Types also uses the example of two of the early Christian theologians, and says, well, one of them sacrificed his sexuality to become a greater intellect, and one sacrificed his intellect to become a greater emotive, spiritual or sexual, I don't remember, person. So I don't know, these are just some thoughts, this is just something I was thinking about, and I don't really know what relevance it has, it just came to mind, because can you undo yourself by being an observer? By being the spectator type? Does that undo you? Is psychology, is over-analysis and over-illumination the great catastrophe of the 20th century? Who knows? Werner Herzog is introspective anyway. You couldn't possibly make the kind of things he's made without a certain degree of that. Perhaps he has then chosen to sacrifice that in giving over then instead to being an experimenter, which is kind of what I'm doing as well. I'm just experimenting. I'm not thinking too much about it. I'm trying not to think too much about it. I'm just throwing my probe out there and seeing what happens. And it's also a way of breaking out of the SFJ world, which I thought was normality, and which so many of us, when we are held to ideas of perfection, seem to take as normality, whereas being a bit messy in the extroverted, intuitive way is more useful. I don't know. But then should we hang on to this cognitive function? Why not try a different one? Why not step outside of the type? And the type is just a concept. I'm not saying it's an objective identifier. Like, I don't identify too strongly with it. I'm just aware that this is the medium through which I understand myself and through which others may understand me. It's the category I happen to fall into. Perhaps it's a tool. You know, you can shift it around. It's just a concept.